from. This is the BIPOC Earper panel hosted by Ghost River Triangle Con. We're super excited to have a great conversation today. My name is Jordan. I'll be moderating and also maybe a panelist, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to say, first off, thank you to the GRTCon team for putting this event together and for creating a space for us to chat about representation and community. One disclaimer, or maybe two, any criticism of the show, cast, crew, network is totally our own and does not take away from the fact that we love Wynonna Earp. And then secondly, there will be no discussion or spoilers of episode 410, because I personally have not watched it yet. I'm dying to, but we'll let that stay with those folks who have watched it. So let's get into the first question. Let's do intros. Tell us your name, pronouns, heritage, location, and favorite thing about Wynonna Earp. I'm gonna ask Jasmine to start.
Yeah, so my name's Jasmine. I go as JMC05 on pretty much all my socials except for Twitter. My pronouns are she and her, and I am half Jamaican and like half Scottish, Irish, English. We're exploring that. It's interesting, that's for sure. I live in Kansas, and my favorite thing about Wynonna Earp is I love the Earp sisters. That's my favorite part, is the Earp sister love.
Awesome. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. Hi everyone. Romy. Twitter, you know me as Mama Goose, maybe, with my art. Pronouns she, her. I'm in the UK, living in the UK. My heritage, I've got Indonesian parents, but they've got like European grandparents. So I was born in the Netherlands, so I'm part Indonesian, Dutch, German, Belgian, maybe a bit of Chinese somewhere in there. So that's a mix, a lot. Everything about Wynonna Earp, I think, like a lot of Earpers, we're drawn first by Way Hot, the queer side, and then it just, now just I love the show in general. I love everyone, the dynamics of Wynonna and Nicole and everything, and especially this season has been so good. The mixture of everyone. So yeah, that's me.
I'll go next. Hello, my name is Maria. My pronouns are she, her. And let's see, my heritage is I'm half Filipino, half Mexican. And I live in Oregon in the United States. And my favorite thing about Wynonna Earp is probably the representation of found family. I think that's been something that I haven't seen a lot depicted as, finding people who you're comfortable being yourself with. That's been really important to me and something that's kind of kept me watching the show, I think. And I mean, Way Hot brings a lot of people in, but that's really kind of what grounded me in the show.
Yeah, I definitely think we've got a found family going on around here. India, how about you?
Hi, my name is India. My pronouns are she, her. I am African American and Samoan. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I would say my favorite thing about the show is just the inclusivity of, several walks of life all at the same time.
Great. CJ?
Oh, CJ hears.
I can't tell if you're talking, but you're muted. There you go.
Hello. Hello. Hi, I'm CJ. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from the Philippines, born and raised. Favorite thing about Winona Earp is Winona herself, because even before I saw her carry Peacemaker or ride a motorcycle, yeah, I loved the that she's kicked ass right away. Although she's very human and flawed, I love that element of her character, and of course, Melanie Scrofano really just sold even from the first few minutes of the show. Yeah.
That's great. And I am Jordan, pronouns she, her, African American with some Jamaican on the side. I'm located in Boston, Massachusetts. And my favorite thing about Winona Earp is just way hot, short and simple. So let's get into it. Did you grow up with any sort of media or pop culture representation of your identity or identities? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I think it's a bit because I grew up in the Netherlands. There is a big community of Indonesian people, although but growing up like in the 70s and 80s, it's, you know, there was no people of color really on TV, Dutch TV or programs. Later that, you know, then later on there was some, you know, with some people with my heritage were on, but very small. But throughout growing up, it was always you know, this Dutch white cis people. Also there was nothing queer, gay on TV. So growing up, it was I watched a lot of American shows, I guess, growing up as well. So they had, you know, African American characters in there more. I think growing up was, you know, there weren't anybody really that I could look up to. So I think music wise, I used to love R&B, you know, black artists. That's what, you know, growing up listening a lot to. My mom used to sing a lot R&B, Tina Turner, you know, so, you know, and so yeah, I had Janet Jackson, and that was our thing, you know. And I have got brothers and sisters, so, you know, my mom called us the Jackson Four and all that stuff. But then I guess later on, I didn't come out being queer or gay until my in my 20s. So there was no representation of my culture, my heritage, plus nothing really, no lesbians or bisexuals out there until much later. So it was, yeah, I never really thought about it, like, until, I guess, you know, more recently. I'm getting older, I've got kids, and I want to pass on my side of the culture, my culture, of my family side. My wife is white, English. My kids are white, so I do want to, you know, give them a bit of that background, like, where am I coming from? Where's mom coming from? The background, you've got a big family from a different country and stuff. And I guess it's at the there. I mean, growing up, I guess I don't know everyone's age, but there's definitely more out there for queer representation, so much more. But again, I think we've discussed it before. It's a lot of white queerness. There's no, you know, no people of color, or if there is, it's like a minute role, or it's, you know, so it's yeah, looking back, growing up, I didn't really have any representation. And I don't know, when, you know, I just lived my life and I had fun and didn't look at it. And but now, like I said, you know, I'm in my 40s, and I'm, you know, I'm looking like, where has it been, you know, where's my representation? And I'm looking for it now, definitely. When I watch TV, I'm looking for anything with, you know, person of color or queerness. If there's nothing there, then I won't watch it, basically. So that's my side of the story. So, and if you guys want to pick up on that.
Yeah, I kind of had a very similar experience. So I'm mixed. I'm half Filipino, half Mexican, like I said earlier. And it's interesting because my parents divorced when I was really young, and I grew up primarily with the Filipino side. And so where I grew up, everyone was Filipino. And so I always felt weird because when I was a little kid, I looked a lot more Mexican. Like I was a little bit darker, and just like my face, I looked more Mexican. And so I never felt like I really fit in. And so I always looked to TV to like try to see if maybe there were other people like me who were mixed. And I like never see representation of mixed backgrounds. It's very, very rare that you see someone who's mixed. And even like in real life too. I remember like the first time I met someone with my same mix, I was like, oh, we're the same mix. Oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. This is amazing. And so, you know, that was something I always looked for. And so since I identified more with my Filipino side, I think I had a tendency to try to find more representation, like Asian representation on TV and things like that. And that even was kind of difficult because most of the time, I feel like Asians are portrayed as like Chinese or Japanese. And it's very difficult to find, you know, Filipino or even like any other country. It's like no other smaller countries really exist. And so I think for me, in terms of representation, like the things I glommed onto, like, I don't know if people watch Disney movies, but like Lea Salonga, she was a singer for Aladdin. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's representation. And it wasn't like even direct representation. It's just like, oh, there are people like me that exist who do things that are cool. And then I'm gay. And so I knew I was gay very young. And so I think my first representation that I saw of that was Willow and Tara on Buffy. And so like I was obsessed with Buffy. And, you know, I always looked for things where I could try to see myself, but it's always been really challenging. You have to find like random movies or shows. Like I remember when Saving Face came out. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie before, but it's about two women who are Chinese getting together. And that was one of the first times I was like, oh my gosh, it's like people who aren't white falling in love, and that's a thing, and that's really cool. And I like love that movie. But it's really hard finding representation very specifically of, you know, color in media where it's not someone who is a very minor character, or, you know, if it's just kind of an afterthought. It's like, oh, we had to add someone of color to the show because we don't want it to all be white people. And you can feel it, like as someone who is of color, it's like you notice that, like, oh, I think that they added that token character in there because they needed some representation. And so I generally try to find shows where it just seems like they're trying to be inclusive in general, and it's not just like an afterthought. But it is hard. I think it's hard to find good representation, at least for my background. I don't know what you guys feel, but.
Totally. Yeah, I think I'm very thankful for the options that are out there. I'd love to see more, but I think, you know, things are trending upwards. Anyone else want to talk about representation of their identities?
I can speak a little bit about growing up. I was born in 1995, but growing up in the 90s during like the Black TV Renaissance and having all of those sitcoms and all of that happening.
Oh, sorry, India, your sound cut out. You may be having some technical difficulties with India.
I could not see my Samoan side anywhere. Like finding out that The Rock was Maori was like, okay, there's something there, but like other than that, it was very scarce until Moana, and she's not even Samoan, so the pool is not very large there.
Yeah, anyone else?
Sure, I'll talk about it. I was born in 90. So I am familiar with that renaissance that you're talking about, like with Sister Sister and One on One and Smart Guy and all these shows where we were seeing like kids of our color on screen. I remember that pretty vividly, and I was glad to see it, but it was also a different experience for me and what I was seeing in my life at the time. So like I was very close to the white side of my family, and I was semi close with the black side of my family. And so it was weird to see like these black families who were like super congealed and happy to be around each other and like learning their culture and stuff like that. And it took me until my 20s until I really got in touch with, you know, my dad and his side of his family, and learning more about the culture that his dad came from as a Jamaican. So that was interesting. But as far as the queer side, Maria, you kind of hit the nail on the head with Willow and Tara. They were kind of like the only lesbians you saw on TV that were normal, you know? It seemed like there were a lot more gay men on television in the 90s.
It's super true.
Yeah. And like, I grew up with gay male culture mostly. And so when I started watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer before Willow was gay. And then when Willow was like gay, I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. And this is what I have been feeling pretty much my whole life. And for her to watch her go through that journey and then to have my own journey kind of going alongside that was really cool. I'm hoping like this new renaissance that's happening right now in the media really takes hold, because I think it's sad that we don't have more Samoans or more Filipinos or Dutch or anything like that on screen. I think that as Black people, we say there's not enough representation, which there's not, but at least we have a lot of representation. We have BET. We have right now we have what is his name? Oh my God, Medea. What is his name? Tyler Perry. Yeah, we have Tyler Perry who's out here just pumping out Black media, and we need that. We need more representation like that, and I'm hoping that the renaissance and the way people are holding these people accountable will really help with the representation. So
yeah, definitely. I also feel like there's been more space for people to create content that reflects their backgrounds. So for example, actually I think this is a quote from Caparel, who I like would live and die for, but something about like, if you don't see the space for yourself, like make it. And I think we're seeing that a lot more. People who come from mixed cultures or underrepresented cultures are definitely making their own space for more content to reflect their identity. So I would love to see that continue to grow. All right, so let's move on to the next question. What are some positive examples of representation that you've seen either on Wynonna Earp or in the behind the scenes folks?
Well, yeah, I guess obviously, Way Hot is was the main thing. But I mean, and then it just especially I can't talk about season 4 about representation, but it's just coming out and Waverly being bisexual and Cat is what's her character's name?
Nicole.
Nicole. My goodness, is yesterday. Being loud and out and proud. In episode 2, that was great. Just no shame, no embarrassment. She was just there, and it was great. And then overall, I think a lot of the characters in Winona are fluid, you know.
Yeah.
So it's I think, I mean, even Doc, who you know, I don't know, everybody's a bit, you know, it can go either way with anyone. So that's quite good. I think some of the writers are queer, so representation there is good. I mean, if we're talking about, you know, people of color on the show, I guess what we've got, well, the main characters are, you know, obviously white, but then you've got the Maroon was there, and then you've got Shamir was on there, and so there was sort of a mixture, you know. So there's a mix, and I guess for a typical show at the moment, that the mixture was, you know, it wasn't equal, but it was good, you know. It's like, I was like, okay, you know, I can watch this show. It's got, you know, it's interesting. It's got queerness, got some people of color, but you know, there's always room for improvement, and I think we're gonna discuss that next.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, so that's sort of my take. I don't know what you guys think about the representation for you, what, you know.
Yeah. Back to your point about like Waverly's journey, I really appreciate that it has been a journey. It wasn't just like a flip switched and, you know, she all of a sudden just knew everything about her own sexuality. That it was definitely like a journey, and she questioned it and she was worried about it. I think that's really reflective of a lot of people who don't just simply like fall into their sexual identity. You know, it's a process and it's a journey, and yeah. Anyone else? Positive representation through Winona Earp? India, go ahead.
I think to like jump off the Way Hot and you went into Waverly, just to add to like what the Cole side of it was, whenever she started, we meet this character who comes on as potentially just a love interest at the time we met her. And then we get this storyline where she's trying to save Waverly, whatever's going on, and then her past shows up, and we all have our opinions about Shay. They're fine, but I think it's important to note that in that, even though you might not like Shay, it does speak to Nicole had a life before this. She's not just brought on as a love interest. She is still a person. She still had a life before this. She has loved people before this, which I think that's, you know, the realest representation I've seen, because a lot of the time you see, you know, a love interest come on and have no past. Just, I'm showing up in town. I've never talked to a person before. You are my first person. So I think that was a very, regardless how you feel about the, you know, hidden wife situation, that was a very like nice way of representing what it is to be human, what it is to live and move. I think that was like just a very good thing there.
Yeah, and even jumping off of that, like the fact that she even has a story, you know, like she has her own story. She's a police officer. She has an actual background within the world. 'Cause like, as much as I love Willow and Tara, for example, Tara didn't really have any kind of like background. It was just like, oh, she's there and she kind of hangs out. And like, she doesn't have her own life and story like the rest of the Scooby Gang does in Buffy. And I thought that was really cool in this show, that they really developed their characters, and the characters, each character goes on their own journey and of growth and kind of figuring things out, which is really easy to identify with. And I think one thing I really liked in this show, so one of my favorite characters is Jeremy. I love Jeremy, but Jerry Bear. And I think one of the reasons I really loved him, I mean, it's cool that he's Indian. So it's cool to have some representation there, but I see myself as a bit of a geek. and so to like see someone who's like really smart, but like who fits into this world, it was really cool to see myself in that way, which is not related to being a person of color specifically, but I like how they try to integrate so many different kinds of personalities and identities and that kind of thing into Wynonna Earp. Something that I just love about the show.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel like there are a lot of there's a lot of like ethnic representation on the show, and everyone comes with a backstory, whether or not we get to fully understand that. But everyone like is not just one dimensional, which I think is really great. Any other thoughts about identity or representation?
I like the fact that the people of color, I mean, Rosita turned into a demon, but most of the time the people of color are actually the good guys, whereas I've seen in a lot of white driven shows or where the main characters are mostly white, where the black people or the people of color are always the bad guys. So to see the cop in the show be the black guy, and to see this mega scientist who's going to help everybody and save everybody is a Latinx girl. And I mean, even Kate, she went against what the vampires were doing to see these people of color doing cool stuff. And Jeremy coming in and being the now I have my own opinions about Jeremy coming in and being the smart guy, because Waverly was the smart girl, and then I feel like we just lost that until this season. That's my own opinion, but it's good to see all these people of color being portrayed as good guys. Now we're introducing more people of color who are turning into the bad people, but I like that they were initially good guys, or they are the good guys, but all of them are so complex. That's the best part about Wynonna Earp, I think, is that every character is complex and they're not all bad or all good, and that's a really good part of the show as well. And then to kind of go off of what you were saying about Nicole and Shay, I like that Shay was a person of color. It kind of, I don't know what it is, but it seems like when there's a romance on the show, in this particular instance, when there's a romance that's meant to be, it's white on white, but it shows that, like, Doc having been in love with Kate, who was black, and Nicole having been in love with Shay, who is, I don't know, mixed race maybe. It just shows that people of color are desired. Even Wynonna being in love with dolls. So showing people of color being desired is also really cool.
Completely agree with that. CJ, any thoughts from you?
So I was very pleased when season 4 began, because I saw Martina. I never would have discovered her if it wasn't for Wynonna. And initially, I didn't assume anything, because her name was, Latina sounding, but she kind of looked like my people. So I looked her up, and turned out she joined the Voice for Kids here, and I was very pleased with that, because usually you find Filipino representation on screen, like in usually in music, like her and Bruno Mars, and just like what Maria mentioned, Lea Salonga. But these are people who are not seen on screen. They are on stage, so we don't get to see them, especially for international audiences. So I was very pleased that they added Martina there, and also I love the fact that she's not around the age of Wynonna. I mean, she's younger. Yeah, I love that, because it added an extra dimension to the stories and how they're gonna carry it out. I I recently just became aware of her background, the character's background, Rachel Valdez's background. that it has something to do with the Mayan culture. But yeah, there's just some confusion there because I mean I've heard I talked to our the members of our group chat here in the Philippines. And there's just a few of us in there. So I asked for some feedback, whatever they wanted to share, and one of them said that that's a confusing part of it because maybe if they wanted someone with the Mayan background, maybe they should have cast someone else with an actual uh, 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 roots from that culture. Uh, and then maybe if they just if they for some reason artistic creative liberties they went or maybe budget they went with partida, then maybe they should have just changed it altogether into Filipino. They just Rachel Brothers' background. Because anyway, we have Latino sounding surnames to begin with here in the Philippines. Yeah, because of the Spanish colonization. And yeah, just to add a little bit on um, the representation growing up. Usually, we see. I mean, when I was growing up, there was just Sina, but then I watched that without knowing that the characters would have that kind of story later on. And there's also um, that one scene, one small arc in the OC. I don't know if you watched that. Olivia Wilde and Marissa, the character, Misha Barton's character, Marissa. So they had a brief relationship, and of course that's like the first same-sex relationship I saw on TV, and also Buffy and Tara. So just little things like that that managed to escape our traditional TV critics that won't usually fly. That won't usually fly. And then I don't think Xena aired fully here in the Philippines because of the way that the story went. It's very traditional back here. And that's also probably one of the reasons uh, why don't our it's very hard to find a network to distribute it, at least the local networks. Yeah.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question, which is just what is some way or what are some ways that the show can kind of grow in representation? And I think to start off, I think access to the show is something that a lot of people have been frustrated with, just depending on where you're from. And I think that has less to do with the show and more about like the networks and royalties and all that kind of legal jargon. But yeah, I think maybe that's one way that I see representation kind of stunted, is that these shows are out there, but they're not accessible. But yeah, if anyone have any ideas of ways that this show can grow in representation, whether that's BIPOC or otherwise.
So, well, I guess to continue, um, hiring, not just in front but behind the camera, POC, uh, crew, cast, to get that storylines, to understand, because we've got the queer storyline in the bag. It's there, isn't it? It's good, but yeah, it's like I said, because we discussed before. I don't know the situation in Canada and the filming, and what cultures are in Canada and what their resources are. I so I guess cast and crew, maybe they could develop a bit more involvement. Uh, Cast again, like main character, not just if when there's a season 5, main character, a new one of a person of color would be good. I get it's always good to get a new character in, an extra dimension, stir it up a bit. Winona Earp it's ticking a lot of boxes, and of course it can always do better in representation. But like I said, Canada TV, it's a mystery to me. So I don't know what you guys think.
Piggybacking off of what CJ was talking about, I think that was one of the big things I had an issue with this season, was how they cast someone who is like fully Filipino as someone who was meant to have like a Mayan or South American background. And then I know that Emily Andrus at one point commented like people can be mixed, which is true. But then you can also cast that appropriately. So I think being genuine with like casting and storyline and like just keeping it consistent is important in general for good representation within a show. I think we got really lucky having both Kat and Dom being within like the queer community. And so it's like, you know, they can play it really well because they understand it to some extent. And so I think the same actually goes for representation with color. It's weird to cast someone of a different race to play a different race. It's kind of like in Mulan. I feel like they cast someone originally who wasn't Chinese, or like they're just things like that where, you know, cast appropriately, because the people who identify with what the actor is, like they want that representation. So like, don't take it away from us. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if other people feel the same way about that, but I think that's one way that they can definitely improve Winona Earp specifically. I mean, I love Winona Earp, and don't get me wrong, it's just that like one thing, but I think that's just really important in general in media, because I feel like it's just so easy to cast a person because it's like, oh, well, you kind of look the part. And then just saying like, well, you're this, so this is what we've decided you are, so this is how you're going to play it. But trying to be, you know, more authentic with casting and what you are representing the person as.
Yeah, I think that's part of a larger conversation about, you know, actors inherently are playing people that they're not. That's part of their job. But where does that line get drawn where you're representing a culture or identity that is not your own, whether that's race, age, you know, physical and mental ability? I think there's a lot of shortcuts that producers and executives take to just get the story out and not think about like the repercussions that are placed on the actor, and then the story itself and how it authentically it's being told or portrayed.
Totally.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I think just to move from that where we are now, in the fact that like, yes, especially I think just because I can speak to it in the Black community in film and TV, you have a lot of mixed race but lighter African American actors, actresses working on projects maybe that weren't made for their skin tone. Zoe Saldana obviously comes to mind in that aspect. But also I think something that Winona has done well, they've cast 2 dark-skinned African-American actors, or I don't know if they're African-American, but Black presenting, I would say. They cast 2 dark-skinned people, which I think is very important, because a lot of the time we do see, you know, the very light skin. I love Zendaya with all my heart, but a lot of the time we do see that representation in the community, and nothing for anyone, you know, above that shade. We have, you know, Yara Shahidi, who is doing amazing work as like a young actress, and I said Zoe Saldana, which she's Afro-Latina, which I think that definitely is something that factors in of like what it means to have an identity as African American and not be represented the way everyone around you is. Like your family looks a certain way, or in some cases people are mixed race and they do get, you know, whitewashed, or in the case of Martina, she's not Mexican and she's supposed to be representing a culture that maybe she doesn't know anything about, or I don't know, she might know something about it, but it's not her own culture to speak on. So if there's anything that goes wrong there, she might not know that, you know, appropriate to be saying things regarding their culture.
Yeah, it places a lot of responsibility on the actor, I think, to authentically tell a story that they may not identify with.
Or fully understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, on top of that, I feel like I did a lot of research on the cast, or no, on the crew behind the scenes to try and find people of color. And I struggled to find people outside of the special effects department that were of color. I think that as much as I like that there's a lot of queer representation, we're missing out on a large conversation that's happening in not just the United States, but it's happening in Canada, it's happening in the United Kingdom, where the systemic racism is really affecting people of color. And I think that if the crew was to represent the community as a whole, with more First Nations, more Asian, more Black people, I think that we would be able to see that reflected more in the writing. I don't see that we kind of skim over stuff like that. But I also think it's really interesting the Clantons, the race, they're like a paint palette. Like they're all different races, the Clantons. So I would really like to see more about that. Like, was Ma'am with a whole bunch of guys? Is it that, I mean, you don't know. She might have killed him. We don't know. Or is it just that the Clantons have this different array of color that it just comes out in other people? Like, I think that's interesting to see families where the siblings don't necessarily look alike, because that's what my family looks like. Like, I'm very fair skinned and my brother is very dark skinned, and I have, my younger siblings look like they are Latin. So it's interesting to me to see in a family where people are different colors, and I like to hear more about their backgrounds. Also, I feel as if a lot of the people of color, we don't get very much of their background. Like Jeremy, we don't know much about him. I would like to know a lot more about him. I know more about Nicole than I know about Jeremy. So, yeah. And Dolls, we didn't really get much on him before he died. And I don't really like the fact that I don't like how he died. I don't know if anybody else, and it seems like we're kind of avoiding that topic, but I don't know. I think that it's really sad that we lost a person of color on the show to a death, especially in the times that we're in. And I feel like if we had more representation in the writer's room or on the crew, that we could have probably seen a better wrapping up of Dolls' story.
Totally, yeah. It seems like often when someone leaves a show, just like, okay, let's kill him. Like that's the ultimate first thought of how to make someone leave a show. But yeah. All right, I want to be conscious of time and get to our next question. So what has your interaction been with the Earper community? Any positive or positive examples or critiques?
I think for me in general, it's been quite good. It's been quite like I mentioned before. It's if you're on Twitter, you don't always know who you're talking to, the race, the color, the sex, because of the handle, like Love Baby One. Who the hell is that? Kind of thing. So it's been generally everybody's been quite. Maybe I follow the right people, but it has always been, kindness and words and of encouragement. So I haven't come across. I mean, maybe from a couple of times when some of the people were maybe harassing the cast a little bit, but that's not the race thing or being a person of color kind of thing. But I think a lot of the fans are predominantly white, probably. Like you said. I know there's a big fandom in Brazil. I think there's a big contingency there, but majority is white fans, and I think when we had the Black Lives Matter movement going on, you could tell there were some issues among the fandom and how to talk about it, how to treat it, and maybe people overstepped the line on a boundary because they didn't understand, kind of thing. So yeah, it's but overall for me, I think it's been good. I've been, people are very kind, and but yeah, like I said, there isn't what I'm aware of, there isn't a lot of fans out there, of color per se. So I don't know how you guys experience that. You've met people online that are of color.
I think just to speak to that, for myself, within the fandom, I've noticed that there's a lot of activism in several spaces. There's a lot of, environmental work going on. There's a lot of, personal growth going on. And that community that's built within the fandom of like, we can change the world, like one person at a time, that has just been like beautiful to watch within the fandom. I've never been in a fandom that takes just important issues and like makes them the forefront of their fandom, and not just, hey, we really like these actresses, let's only talk about this. Let's I come from music fandoms usually, and a lot of it's just like, oh, it's about award shows and nothing else matters. But to see Earpers like going out and cleaning up beaches and cleaning up their cities and, rallying behind recycling and things like that, and just a lot of activism in a lot of different spaces. During the summer, there was a lot of, the summer of 2020, whenever the Black Lives Matter protests and things were happening, there was a lot of, information sharing going on that was positive. I think, though, the antithesis to that is that sometimes the activism in the fandom and the all-encompassing need to help sort of overshadows a lot of things when you have people who think they know what's right and what they're doing is right and they're trying to do right, but they're not getting the tone right. So they're speaking over Black voices, the few that we do have in the fandom. And a lot of it, isn't, rooted in anger or anything, but it is sort of disheartening to see fans of color, the few that there are, be spoken over whenever they're saying like, hey, my community's hurting, here's how you can help. And then to have people say like, well, we're not going to do it that way, we're going to do it our way because we think we're right. So I think, along with, yes, all the beautiful things in the fandom, sometimes that activism can not act as a boost or like a bulletin board for what's going on, but sort of act as a cover. And you sort of have to fit somewhere else. And maybe in regards to Black Lives Matter, sometimes it can feel like, well, being Black is a secondary thing. Like, we're fighting for women's issues and we're fighting for queer issues and we're fighting for environmental issues. So find a space in that and say something instead of hey, I'm Black, and there's police brutality happening, we need to talk about this, that sometimes it just gets lost in the wherewithal of it.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. And I think that like it's possible to care about multiple issues at multiple times and in different ways. I think sometimes that can get kind of lost. You made a really good point about, we're caring about women's issues, or we're caring about LGBT issues. And it's like, you can care about all these different issues and show up for everyone. Leading into my next question, like how can we make the Earper community a safer space for the BIPOC folks?
I think just listening to people who are telling you their truth is the best way to do that. Like India was saying, if you're so busy with your social activism or social justice that you're over speaking the people who are the victim of whatever it is, then you're contributing to the problem. So if you can listen to the voices of that community, whether it be the BIPOC community or, the gay community or whatever it is, if you just listen to those voices and say, okay, well, how can we help? And then move forward in working with that community, I think that's the easiest way. I suffer from a lot of anxiety and I don't like drama, so I stay off of Twitter. I avoid that community with everything I have, because it's a very toxic, in my opinion. I'm not saying you shouldn't be on Twitter, but in my opinion, it seems to be a kind of toxic environment. And so I kind of stay away from that. I enjoy the interactions in person, so I go to like Earpapalooza and talk with people, and it seems like they're in a face-to-face kind of way. When you're talking to someone about an issue or something that's going on in the BIPOC community, they're more willing to learn from you because you're in their face, and they can't just dismiss you, because you're not just words on a computer. You're a person, and they're humanizing you because you're a human standing in front of them. And I don't know how we can translate that online or what, but I hope that more face-to-face type of things can happen online. Does that make sense?
Totally. I think also stating, like for Facebook groups or like Twitter chats, like stating intentions of the group and sort of like a policy or community guidelines is also really important, just to set the intention there and say, like, this is going to be like a safe space. Any kind of like hate speech or like unwarranted criticism will not be like tolerated, and having people who can kind of moderate that, I think helps. But I mean, still people are gonna say what they're gonna say, and you can't stop them from doing that. But I think having that kind of stated at least speaks to like the intention of the group. Any other thoughts?
I think it's just challenging in general with COVID right now. Being online and existing online is just so different from being in the real world with people. It's very much like what Jasmine said, learning about people, learning about things. It's so hard to do in a virtual space to the same extent. Because the thing is, when we're online, we're a little different than we are in real life. Like I don't mean that in a bad way or anything like that, but it's hard to be your authentic self and to really truly depict who you are being online. You don't get that depth that you get when you meet someone in person. You really get to know someone. You get to figure out like what's important to them, and so I think with the BLM movement happening during COVID, I think it was even more challenging to find kind of that middle ground where people could really start to truly understand and learn how they could support people in a way that was respectful and inclusive. Because the thing too is, you know, I feel like the white voices in general have a little bit more volume. That's just the way it is. And that it's just kind of like how the world is at this time. And so it's so easy for those voices to drown out people of color, Black people, Indigenous people. But it's hard to get that feedback that they're doing that too. So it's like, and they're trying to help. So it's like, but how can I help if my voice is already louder than yours? And, you know, trying to share their platform appropriately with people who don't have a voice, like it just gets so complicated when you're just online. And so my hope is that as COVID starts to kind of wind down, and now we've had all of these conversations, that that things can actually start to improve when we can actually come together in real life and try to make some real changes. My fear is that because this whole movement started last year, that people are just going to forget about it. You know, it's so easy for people who aren't colored to forget. Because it's like, well, I did my thing, I donated, you know, I did my rally and things are better now. And it's like, well, not really. This is something that's going to take a really, really long time to change. And it's like every heart needs to change, you know. And the thing too is, I think a lot of people don't realize, because it's so ingrained in culture, people don't even realize that they're racist or, you know, whatever they are. And so, or not inclusive or whatever. And so I really hope that these conversations continue, and that we work towards like real change, substantial change, and that conversations become different than they are now because people start to understand more. And that was kind of a rant, I'm sorry, but.
No, that was wonderful. As much as I would love to continue this conversation, we do have to wrap up, but we all can continue this conversation offline. So for final thoughts, I just want to ask you all, what's something you're grateful for, whether that's Wynonna Earp related, whether it's just in your personal or professional life. Yeah, I think that's a good place to end.
That's a big question, Jordan. A lot of things happening. What I'm grateful for, I'm grateful to be alive, sort of, kind of, you know. I am grateful for the Wynonna Earp community. Like a lot of people, you know, I found him when I was in a difficult space. I mean, I've got chronic conditions, so, you know, it makes it difficult sometimes, and I got kids, and, you know, and then online I found people like they can pick you up and lift you up and stuff. So I think that's, so yeah, to keep it Wynonna, you know, I'm grateful for the community I found.
Awesome.
I would say that I'm grateful for moments like this, getting to speak to people who share different beliefs, different views, but can come together and say like, hey, there's something going on. We need to talk about it. We need to discuss it. So thank you to, you know, Ghost River Triangle Con for, you know, giving us this space here and, you know, making the space within the fandom to really like discuss things like this. I'm definitely grateful for that, because so often we don't get to hear from people that look like us. This is a pretty new thing for me within the fandom, to hear from this many, you know, people of color and non-white faces that are just saying like, hey, something is wrong, we need to talk about this. So very grateful for that.
Great.
I'm grateful for, hello?
Go ahead.
I'm grateful for every one of you. I've learned a lot from being here, just listening and absorbing everything. And mostly I'm grateful for the Winona community, the Earpers, for all the Earper support. My family has received recently. They sent messages for my niece who's been hospitalized, and actually, uh, uh, without Winona Earp, I never would have met Filipino Earpers. A few of them have actually helped my one of my niece who launched a campaign to she she decided to draw, make art, and then raise funds for her sister's hospitalization. So that's been such a great blessing that I'll never forget. And also, initially I didn't want to join Earth Twitter. I didn't want to join Twitter. I just wanted to be a fan. But then I've read so much about the kindness of this community, and ever since I, I entered the community, I've just been so warmly welcomed everywhere. Like, and then I've met, well, not physically met, but but I have met a few also here. Uh, and who would have thought that I would have met you all and the other friends that I have from all parts of the world. I'll never forget that, and the fact that it just really takes courage. That's why my Twitter handle involves the word courage, because that speech, Waverly speech in 109, like she took that risk and she took a leap of faith, and that's what I did also, and so many of us did that in our personal lives and online lives, stuff like that. So that's been driving me in the middle of this pandemic, to take more risks, including joining this. I've never done this before, so I've been growing, and I know that this community is growing also, and there's a lot of room for improvement, and I'm just so very grateful that there's this space for us to have conversations like this that are very important. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thanks, CJ. Maria?
I think the thing that I'm most grateful for is also the community. Like, I started watching Winona Earp because I was going through some personal stuff, and I was feeling really lost in my life. And it was a time when I needed a lot of support that I didn't realize I needed. And I, on a whim, decided to join Twitter, and I met some amazing friends. Like, I have these friends I talk to every day now. They're like my family. And, having that, like, I'm just so grateful that I found people who are like me, who understand me in a way that I don't think I've met other people who understand me or get where I'm coming from. And that's been such a gift. It really did save my life. And so I'm just really grateful for that.
That's awesome. Jasmine?
Well, I'm grateful to be alive, first and foremost, but this community has given me a voice that I never had before. Like I said, I struggle with anxiety, and I stay quiet in a lot of situations where I probably should speak up for myself. And so this community and listening to people and the show has just given me like a voice that I've lacked for a really long time. And I think that the family aspect that the Earpers provide for me is essential to me being alive. So I really appreciate every single one of you out there on Twitter, on TikTok, in these forums and things that we're doing here, because just the sense of community and the sense of familial love that is out there. We may argue, but that's what families do. So I think that the Earper community just gives me that warm and cozy feeling to know that, hey, I feel alone right now, but I could reach out to my Earper friends and they'd be there for me, you know? So that's what I'm most thankful for and appreciative of, is the Earper community, and how no matter how much we fight, we're there for each other.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely found family in the Earper community. Well, we are out of time, unfortunately. I want to say thank you to Bernie for inviting us to this panel. Thank you to Shelly for interpreting. Thank you, Ghost River Triangle, just for having this virtual event. Please stick around for Kat's panel at 1. I can't make it. Tell her I love her. And everyone have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are. Thanks for joining.